All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having an incredible week. Got a jam-packed show for you guys today. I want to hit on the two crazy games from last night before we get into our mailbag, as LeBron James's 1,297 game streak of double-figure scoring finally comes to end in a poetic fashion, as he makes an extra pass out of an Austin Reaves double team that leads to a wide open corner three for Rui Hachimura to get a big win for the Lakers without Luka Doncic on the road against a very good Toronto Raptors team. After that, we're going to talk briefly about the Philadelphia 76ers getting a win after blowing an 18-point fourth quarter lead versus the Golden State Warriors. An interesting kind of like bench group for the Warriors that came together. I also want to talk briefly about the lack of development for some of Golden State's young players and how that's been a big part of their struggles throughout the season. And then, as usual on Fridays, we're going to get into our mailbag at the tail end of the show. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing incredible work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us there for more content throughout the season. And then don't forget about our mailbags. If you want to get in questions for our Friday mailbags, just drop them in our full episodes on YouTube in the comments. Right, mailbag with a colon, write your question. That's how I can sort through them when I'm looking through the comments. We'll get to them on Fridays throughout the remainder of the season. Couple other quick announcements. Like this video. It's super helpful for us. If you just would take a second to scroll down and hit that like button. And then we have our second playback stream of the week tonight. We have the Lakers on the road in Boston against the Celtics. Should be a fun one. I've also got my buddy Adam Taylor, who covers the Celtics individually as a team. So he'll be joining us to hang out for that Celtics game tonight. Should be a fun one. All right, let's talk some basketball. So again, what looked like it was going to be a slow night in the NBA turned into a fun one, thanks to a couple of wild finishes in Philly and Toronto. And we're going to hit those two games before we get into our mailbag. So LeBron's 1,297 consecutive double-digit scoring streak finally comes to the end. And according to what both LeBron and Rui said in their post-game interviews, essentially what happened was LeBron knew the double team was coming.
I wanted to put him in a payoff spot. You know, AR been cooking all night, and I started seeing our coach kind of, telling Scotty Barnes to possibly double. So I wanted to keep Rui on the same side to be my payoff spot.
He knew that Austin, after cooking the Raptors for 44 points last night, was going to get double teamed. And so he directed Rui to go to what he called the payoff spot, meaning the weak side corner, and basically told him he was going to pass him the ball. And then like clockwork, the double team came from Scotty Barnes against Austin. LeBron cut into the passing lane and rifled a cross-court pass right into the shooting pocket for Rui Hachimura, who wins the game with that corner three. And it was kind of cool listening to LeBron and Rui talk about it after the game, and specifically LeBron talking about that concept of the payoff spot, because it's something we've actually talked about quite a bit on this show. Specifically, a couple weeks ago, you guys might remember we had a conversation about this surrounding Desmond Bane in the Magic offense. In some of the sequence where Desmond Bane is off ball, the Magic started putting him in the weak side corner instead of on the opposite wing, essentially allowing him to be in that payoff spot. The reason is because many basketball plays have repeatable sequences. Whenever a team doubles on the strong side, they're almost always going to leave that weak side corner guy open. Why? Because the strong side corner is too easy of a pass to make. If you leave the guy in the dunker spot open, he's going to dunk it. That's going to go in every single time. The opposite wing, one pass away. It's an easy pass to make. So you're going to rotate to that guy, kind of like Emmanuel quickly did on that final possession to LeBron. And the guy on the opposite end of the court is going to be the most difficult guy to pass to, and the ball is going to take the longest amount of time to get there, which is going to allow your defense a chance to rotate. That's why that's the payoff spot. That's the spot that a defense is most willing to leave open, and that if an offense can get it there soon enough, there's an open look to be had. And that's what LeBron identified with that final sequence. And again, LeBron saw that whole sequence before it happened, informed his teammate about it, told him where to be and to be ready, made the read so fast, and made the pass on a line drive right into his shooting pocket, so the Raptors had no chance to rotate, and Rui burns them to win the game. Really just a classic career-defining type of play from LeBron James. One of my biggest pet peeves over the years with the way LeBron has been covered is just the way that he's portrayed by his detractors to be this guy who cares more about things that have nothing to do with winning, like himself or the showmanship or whatever it might be, the off-court behavior. People try to portray him as a guy that doesn't care about winning. And here's the thing. Like, does LeBron enjoy being famous? Clearly. That doesn't take a whole lot to come to that conclusion. Does LeBron play to the camera and really lean into being a showman? Of course he does. Does he care about his individual records and personal resume? More than most people, yeah. Because he's the one player in NBA history to actually get compared to Michael Jordan. And he's competitive, and he wants to win that race. And he knows that everything, including the wins, including the individual records and his personal resume, will help him achieve that goal of his that he has. And the funniest thing about the people who focus on those things is they refuse to acknowledge the how behind those behaviors. You want to know why LeBron has become so famous that he can play to the camera whenever he wants? You want to know why LeBron is the only NBA player to get compared to Michael Jordan? Because he's one of the greatest winners in the history of sports. Winning has always been the main thing for LeBron, and it's been clearly demonstrated throughout his career. This guy has won his conference 10 times. He's made it to the conference finals 2 additional times. He's won more playoff series than any NBA franchise since he came into the league in the summer of 2003. He's literally hoisted the Larry O'Brien trophy 4 different times, a feat only matched by the Golden State Warriors since he came into the league, who achieved 2 of those by putting together the most talented roster in the history of the NBA by a wide margin. He's the greatest winner of his era. And last night was just the latest in a long line of examples of it. I talk all the time about, for young players, about how when you're having a bad game, you just need to try to find a way to make a play. LeBron wasn't ready for what they asked him to do last night. We talked about it in the Laker Collective pod with Trevor and Jovan yesterday in the morning. I talked about it right on the playback stream before the tip went up last night. LeBron last season was healthy for all of training camp and still looked bad for the first month. Why? Because he's 40 years old, and it takes a long time for him to ramp his body up for NBA basketball. This season, because of the sciatica, he wasn't working out in July, or he got injured in July, but he wasn't working out at the end of July or all of August or all of September. He was starting his ramp up substantially later in the process. This dude's been playing 5-on-5 basketball against pros for a couple of weeks. And it was fine when Luka was there because the team is so damn good without him that they can rack up regular season wins and let him slowly ramp up. That's why I haven't been worried at all about how he's looked over the last couple of weeks. Take your time, LeBron. They're going to keep racking up wins even as you're building your rhythm. But unfortunately, and congratulations to Luka welcoming another child into the world, but because Luka's over in Slovenia with his family, LeBron was basically forced through that next man up mentality to be ready for something that he wasn't ready for. He wasn't ready to be a guy that had to be like one of the 2 primary shot creators for the Lakers last night. He's probably like a month away from that, at least a couple of weeks. I expected him to be pretty mediocre last night. And Scottie Barnes made things even harder for him. He basically refused to switch off of him all game. It was one of the big game plan things that was causing problems for LeBron. So like in guard screens, they were hedging and recovering. Even when LeBron was setting screens, Scottie wasn't helping. He was doing everything he could to stay attached to LeBron. And that was a big part of why LeBron was 4 for 17 from the field. Scottie Barnes athletically overwhelmed him one-on-one. So like just as a little side point, Scottie Barnes deserves a ton of credit for being the first guy physically capable of holding LeBron below a double-digit scoring output. Took 17 shots. And it's not like LeBron wanted to shoot 17 shots last night. Like I've seen people be like, oh, he was 4 for 17 last night. He was bad. You're a damn loser. You think LeBron wanted to take 17 shots last night? He had no choice under the circumstances but to try to manufacture offense. The Lakers were playing Nick Smith Jr. in an attempt to try to find ball handling with Luka Doncic out of the lineup. He wasn't close to being ready for the role that he had last night, but he had no choice but to try. And here's the thing. He couldn't make a shot to save his life at the rim or from the perimeter, but he just found ways to contribute throughout the game. He had 11 assists and 0 turnovers, generating offense by like burning the Raptors for helping off of the corners multiple times. He drew a couple of double teams off of Jake LaRavia where he hit him in the corner for threes. He caught Emmanuel quickly once, sitting at the block about 15 feet off of Dalton Connect in the left corner, rifled a pass right into Dalton Connect's shooting pocket. He knocked down a three. He made a bunch of advantage reads in 4-on-3 sequences, one where Austin drew a blitz. Jackson got the ball in the short roll. It made their pass to LeBron. They rotated to LeBron. He just rifled it right back to Jackson down the lane for a dunk. He drove a closeout off the left wing in the second half and lobbed the ball to DeAndre Ayton for a dunk. The game winner to Rui in the corner. Those are all advantage sequences where he made that like extra read that ended up finishing the play. He ran that two-man game with Austin to generate a bucket. He got one right in the start of the third quarter, that classic little inverted ball screen where Austin screens for LeBron and then slips to the front of the rim, and LeBron just hits him with a bounce pass for a layup. 11 assists in 0 turnovers, just found a way to generate offense as much as possible. And again, when you're having a rough night as a basketball player, you just have to try to find a way to make a play or a couple of plays to help your team win the game, and then no one's going to care about everything else that happened. Obviously, he has the game-winning assist, but he had a big defensive rebound in crunch time, boxing out Scotty Barnes underneath the basket. He had several big defensive rotations late in the game that helped the Lakers get stops. And by the way, the Lakers logged a 78 defensive rating in clutch time yesterday, continuing their trend of being the best clutch defense in the NBA as they improved to 7-0 in clutch games this season. The Lakers have been able to get stops at the end of games when they need to. Anyway, like as far as LeBron goes, I'm just going to enjoy these final moments of his career while we can. I think he's been an excellent example for young basketball players when it comes to how to approach the game, impacting winning through your effort, through your IQ, focusing on every single facet of the game. He's just the greatest winner of this era of NBA basketball, and no detractor will ever be able to take that away from him, no matter what they say. A couple other quick Lakers things before we get to our mailbag. Austin Reaves, 44 and 10 again last night, averaging 29, 6, and 7 on 69% true shooting this season. I was talking about this last night on Playback. Like, to be clear, the Lakers aren't getting Giannis. Certainly not this season. If they did, it would be because he somehow made it to the offseason and the Lakers got access to another draft pick. But I still think that's extremely unlikely. One of these other teams is going to have so much more to offer in terms of draft compensation as well as a good young player, and they'll end up getting Giannis. And again, if they even try to do it during the season, it's just impossible with the salaries. It'd be extremely difficult for them to pull off. But just as a thought exercise, I think he'd be the best player included in any potential package for Giannis. Like if the season ended today, Austin would make the All-NBA team. Maybe even second team. He'd be a better centerpiece than any of the other packages I've seen thrown around. He's a better player than Jalen Johnson right now. He's a better player than Paolo Banchero right now. He's a better player than Steph Castle or Dylan Harper. He's easily the best player in the league that's been thrown around as a featured piece in one of these Giannis trade packages. And I only say that as a thought exercise. Again, I don't think Austin's going to be a Buck and Giannis is going to be a Laker. I'm simply saying this is how great of a player Austin Reaves has become in this league. It's like dependable now. It's like, oh, Austin, we need him to get 40 and 10 tonight, and he's just gonna get 40 and 10. A career high 22 points in a single quarter last night, was bombing logo threes, frustrating the hell out of Toronto's perimeter defenders with his pump fakes and drawing fouls, just literally just turning over his right shoulder on Colin Murray-Boyles and just showing the ball, leaves his feet, draws the foul. Same thing against Jamal Shed on the left baseline. Little step back, show the ball. Jamal lunges in. They can't help themselves, and they're committing fouls. He was getting to the rim at will. He had this crazy play. One of my favorite highlights of Austin's young career. In crunch time, Lakers are down by 2, and it looks like they're going to call a timeout. All the Lakers players drift into the backcourt, just kind of waiting for Austin to dribble across half court and call a timeout. Austin says, screw it, just drives to the basket and scores a layup over a triple team to tie the game. He's just an absolute hooper, man. And it's been such a joy covering the league to be able to watch his ascent on the Lakers. It's been a lot of fun. Lots of other shout outs for Lakers role players in a big road win. DeAndre Ayton was phenomenal in this game. He was burning the Raptors in their at the level coverage with lobs. So when Austin would come off of a screen attacking Mamu in particular, Mamu was coming up to the level. When Mamu would come up, Ayton would roll behind him. And Austin, who's been a terrible lob thrower this year, actually was pretty good with his lobs last night, completed 3 of them to DeAndre Ayton over the top. I thought Ayton's transition defense was amazing. He was a part of several big transition stops that the Lakers got in the second half just by sprinting back and being big around the rim. He had the biggest stop of the game, a switch onto Brandon Ingram in crunch time on the second to last possession, so the final defensive possession, guarding Brandon Ingram one-on-one, runs with him along the lane line to the basket, gets a great contest, forces him into a miss. He anchored the defense in the half court all night. Ayton just continues to be amazing. Jake LaRavia, he kind of had a bit of a rough first shift, but I thought he was amazing in the second half. He was scrapping on the defensive glass all night, either getting the ball or like tapping the ball out to other Lakers who could get the ball. He hit a couple of huge corner threes off of double teams of LeBron. He made one of the biggest transition plays of the night. It was actually a goaltend. It was this weird sequence where Mamu was like probably going to miss a dunk. He like went up to dunk it and like threw the ball into the rim. And then Jake LaRavia came flying in and blocked it off of the rim. And here's the thing, it was probably a goaltend, but you know, it's bang, bang play happened lightning fast. And it was such a weird play because Mamu was going to miss anyway. And it was just a big hustle play that he made that converted what would have been 2 points for the Raptors into a stop. Rui, big game, makes the corner 3 that wins it. Nick Smith, again, sliding into a bigger role when the Lakers need ball handling. He also had one of those big transition sequences last night. Austin had a turnover that led to a run out. Nick Smith sprinted back, stole the ball underneath the basket, and then went down the other end and hit a little mid-range jump shot. It was a 4-point swing. Massive, massive play there in the second half. Just a really fun Lakers win. It was fun listening to JJ Redick talk about it after the game. He was just talking about how it was a very connected team and that he really enjoyed competing with the guys. Really good vibes for a Lakers team that's only a half game back for the second best record in the entire NBA right now, with Luka missing 5 games, with LeBron missing 15 games, with Austin missing a few games with a groin injury. It's just been a special season for them so far. And another challenge tonight in Boston, and might be without LeBron as well, in addition to Luka in that one, as LeBron hasn't been playing in back-to-backs to start the season. We will be covering that game on playback tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Big news. Hard Rock Bet is now live in Michigan. Sign up today and place your first $5 sports bet. If it wins, you get $150 in bonus bets on top of your winnings. And if you're into more casino games, new customers can get up to $1,000 back in casino bonus if you're not up money after your first 24 hours playing slots. Win money or get a casino bonus back. Plus, you get 200 bonus spins, winnings paid in cash. Want to see what everyone else is betting on tonight? Top picks or parlays across any sport? The Hard Rock Bet app literally shows you. It's another reason to download the app, just for the info. Tap Discover, and you can see trending picks and parlays at any time. Hard Rock Bet offers new promos daily, plus big legendary rewards drops every Thursday, like gifts under the tree. So whenever you're listening, just open up the app and check out what you got waiting for you. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. Another wild finish in Philly. The Warriors went into Philly without Steph and Jimmy, and then Draymond got his foot stomped on again, so he ended up leaving the game in a walking boot. So some more trouble there, although the reporting is that Draymond is expected to continue to try to play through that injury. The Warriors couldn't score to save their lives. Brandin Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga both had really rough games. I want to talk to them a little bit more in a minute because the negativity surrounding them is really starting to reach a fever pitch right now. Tyrese Maxey's lighting them on fire on the other end, and the Warriors end up going down by 22 in the first quarter. They end up stiff-arming them around there most of the rest of the game. But then the Warriors mount an epic 18-point fourth quarter comeback led by one of those classic little 3-guard lineups that, you know, Golden State fans complain about all the time. We had Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, and Pat Spencer. Will Richard got in there a little bit too. So 3 of those 4 guards at any given time. Guy Santos playing the 4. And then a mix of Al Horford and Quentin Post was the group that ended up leading the comeback. Buddy Hield's like constantly just running by Tyrese Maxey and getting every single offensive rebound. Tyrese Maxey's got to be more attentive on the defensive glass. That's something that's been standing out to me in film. He's got to figure that out. It's just a little detail that's undercutting some of his success on the other end. DeAnthony Melton was flying around on defense, breaking plays up, hitting jump shots. Pat Spencer continues to provide like that, like little bit of audacious scoring in these situations, hitting pull-up threes, drawing fouls in the mid-range. Guy Santos hit a couple of spot-up threes. He had a spin move on the baseline that got the Warriors bench all stoked, where he kind of got caught the ball in the short corner and the possession kind of died. No one was open. And he just ripped to the right and pounded into his spin move, toasted his man off the dribble, got into a little reverse layup. A nice move from Guy Santos. Horford had a big block and drop coverage. He also had an assist out of a post-up double team. And Quentin Post hit a couple of threes, all while the team was playing great defense on the other end. They mixed in some 1-3-1 zone during that defensive run, as well as some man-to-man. The Sixers were kind of playing into it a little bit by letting their foot off the gas and just passing the ball around the perimeter and taking some bad pull-up jump shots. But the Warriors just battled, and all of a sudden, Pat Spencer hits a three off the left wing, and they're up by 4. And it's like, oh, man, like the Warriors are about to have a massive win here. But the Sixers finally woke up, and they made 4 big plays late in the game that ended up stealing the victory back in their direction. Quentin Grimes had a big driving and one out of the left corner where he just kind of went through Pat Spencer's chest and got an and one. Tyrese Maxey, after settling a few times for some bad jump shots, finally got downhill, pounded into a spin move over his right shoulder and put it up off the glass with his left hand. A really, really nice basket attack from Tyrese Maxey. And then the final sequence. So the Sixers had the ball down by 1, and VJ Edgecombe identifies Tyrese Maxey's taken like a tough step back jump shot, like 18, 19 feet off of the left elbow or off of the right elbow extended. And he airballs it. But VJ just kind of like identifies that the airball is coming and just cuts into the open gap, times it perfectly, jumps, grabs the airball and feeds it back into the basket to put the Sixers up by 1. DeAnthony Melton leaks out, and Buddy Hield grabs the inbound and just rifles it down the floor to DeAnthony Melton, wide open for what would have been a layup to win the game. And Tyrese Maxey, who was literally like wrapped up in the Sixers bench, because on his fall away jump shot, he was like falling over into the bench. He somehow entangles himself from the mess and sprints back and blocks DeAnthony Melton at the buzzer to save the game. Easily the best defensive play of his young career, and just an insane display of his speed in the open floor. And just a lot of fun in that particular game. Couple really fun finishes between the two games that we covered this morning. And I love that about the NBA. Like we complain a lot about the NBA regular season, about how it's too long and how it can lack urgency sometimes. But, you know, that was what looked like a pretty mediocre slate, and it gave us some really cool moments. And that's ultimately what makes the NBA regular season still fun, is that it just provides so many moments over the course of those 6 months. Yeah, there's a lot of bad games and blowouts in there as well. But generally speaking, each week you just get a dozen or so classic games with great finishes, with crazy highlights. And that's why we keep coming back to this shit like a drug every single year when mid-October comes around. Before we get to the mailbag, I was thinking a little bit last night about how things have gone so wrong for the Warriors this year. And to be clear, it's not over for them. They're 3.5 games back of the 6th seed to get out of the play-in. That's an achievable gap. And when they have their top 3 guys healthy and available on the floor, they've been really good this year. But I was thinking about it because, like, the reason why they're below 500 instead of staying afloat has essentially come down to the lack of development of their young talent. If you look at the end of their roster, a lot of those guys have been great. Like, you keep finding the Will Richard types and the Pat Spencer types and the Guy Santos types and the guys that can be their 8th, 9th, 10th man on any given night when Steve Kerr needs to find some quality rotation minutes in the back end of his roster. They keep succeeding there. Their stars are just true pros, right? They do their jobs every night. When they've been on the floor, they've been winning their minutes. The stars do their jobs. They haven't been perfect. There's been bad games mixed in there. But for the most part, those guys have been really, really good. It's that middle tier of the roster where they've needed some of these, not like the undrafted second round pick types to pop, but where they've needed like these first round pick, high pedigree dudes to pop, and they just haven't. And they've needed pods to be on a little bit more of that Austin Reaves type of trajectory of becoming like a legitimate offensive weapon at the guard spot. And he just hasn't become that. They've needed Jonathan Kuminga to become something closer to what Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby have become. And he just hasn't. And because of that, it just puts so much more emphasis and pressure on the older veterans to be awesome every night. And it forces Steve Kerr to lean on his 8th, 9th, 10th man more often. And those guys, they can do their jobs, but ultimately it's a key possession late in the game, and DeAnthony Melton's isoing off the top and smoking a left-handed layup off the glass. It'd be great if one of those first-round picks that you had, a lottery pick, could have developed into a guy when Steph's out with a thigh contusion that could come in and get a bucket when the team needs a bucket. And that lack of development in that middle portion of their roster where some of their higher pedigree young talent has been, that lack of development, I think, ultimately has been the thing that's led to this frustrating start as the Warriors end up slipping below 500. All right, let's get into our mailbag. First question. Would you rather see the Spurs split up their young core in depth for Giannis or trade Sohan, Olynyk, 3 or 4 firsts for Trey Murphy if it takes that much? Man, 3 or 4 firsts for Trey Murphy would be pretty wild. I keep thinking about things in the context of Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City isn't going anywhere. You have to find a way to compete with them. They're going to get another lottery pick this year. Chet is going to keep dramatically improving year over year. So is Jalen Williams. Shea has shown another leap, basically marginally across the board in his game this season. AJ Mitchell has popped. They have other first-round picks that have gotten hurt that'll be rejoining the team at some point in the future. Cason Wallace is going to continue to get better. The Thunder aren't going anywhere. This is an arms race now. You have to call on Giannis. Now, I'm not saying, I personally hope that Giannis stays out in the East. We talked about that yesterday. I think it's better for the conference balance in the NBA, and I don't think it's good to have all 4 of your top-tier superstars and all 4 of your top-tier contenders all out in the Western Conference. I don't think that and then Luka and the Lakers are probably that 5th team, and you just don't want all of those teams all stacked up in one conference, right? But San Antonio shouldn't care about that. They should care about how they're trying to compete with the Oklahoma City Thunder at the top of the conference. And if you make a deal for Giannis, you can get it done with something like Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson in either of your 2 young guards, Dylan Harper or Steph Castle, just one of them, and some draft compensation. If you do that, your starting lineup becomes De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, Julian Champagnie, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Victor Wembanyama. That is a frightening combination of a duo that's impossible to score on at the rim in Giannis and Wemby, and super athletes on the perimeter. De'Aaron Fox shooting the 3 super well this year. Devin Vassell, Julian Champagnie, traditional shooters. That's shooting and two-way talent on the perimeter surrounding 2 of the very best front court players literally in the history of the league for Giannis and soon to be for Victor Wembanyama. And you don't sacrifice much in depth. You still have Steph Castle off the bench. You still have Luke Cornett off the bench. You still have Jeremy Sohan off the bench. That's probably the best top 8 in the entire NBA, even over a team like OKC. And you'd still have flexibility to make moves and pivot off of that core if you need to. There's a depth there of literally 3 starting caliber awesome guards there. You could flip one at some point in the future if you needed to. Say Steph Castle makes a leap and you pivot off of De'Aaron Fox or whatever it is. It's not like you're tying yourself into Giannis and sacrificing your entire future. It's a no-brainer. You make the call. Maybe you get outbid. Maybe Orlando ends up jumping in. Maybe Atlanta ends up jumping in. Maybe Oklahoma City ends up jumping in. Who knows? But I think you make the call because you're the one team that presents a real physical dynamic that OKC could struggle with. And that's Giannis and Wemby completely shutting down the rim and having the type of big athletic guards that can make things a little bit tougher on OKC's pull-up jump shooters. It's an arms race. OKC is a juggernaut, and you're one of the few teams positioned well enough to actually compete with them in the coming years. I think it's something you have to consider. What do you think will happen if OKC approaches the Bucks and offers J-Dub plus salary filler, probably Hartenstein, with picks for Giannis? For the record, I don't think Sam Presti will ever do something like that, but I think it's the best return that the Bucks can get on Giannis and instantly makes OKC the favorites to win the title to potentially being more scary than the 2017 Warriors. Another question. Do you think if a move like that was on the table, should Adam Silver stop it? To straight up say no to this trade because it would make the league so unfair. So here's the thing. I agree with you that if the Thunder actually wanted Giannis, they could have him. They've got all the draft picks. They've got all the talented young players. They could certainly make something like that happen. It's just an unnecessary risk for OKC. So think of it this way. You've already made yourself, as currently constructed, a substantial championship favorite. We'll see how things go over the next month. There's a lot of basketball games to be played, and OKC definitely has a tougher December schedule. But at some point in the next month, if things stay the same, in our next contender rankings, I'm going to put OKC in a tier by themselves at the top of the league without any trade. Giannis has become a bit injury prone in recent years. He's hurt again, has a calf injury. He's missed a bunch of playoff games over the course of the last few years. So you could, yes, increase your championship odds this season, but also have a higher risk for some sort of derailing injury where if you don't have J-Dub and you don't have a Giannis and you don't have an Isaiah Hartenstein, then you could run into an issue where you become more beatable this season. Right now, as currently constructed, they might not be as much of a favorite as they would be if they made a Giannis trade, but I think they're more resilient to injuries right now because they're younger. They're built in a way to where even if J-Dub is out, they can handle large chunks of the regular season. I just think for OKC, it's an unnecessary risk for them, so I'd be stunned if they made a Giannis trade. Next question. Do you buy the idea that the Orlando Magic are a better basketball team without Paolo? Or is it just better spacing from De Silva and Jet Howard playing in place of Paolo? Couple things. I've mentioned this a lot lately, but the Magic started their turnaround before Paolo Banchero got hurt. They were 5-2 in the last 7 games that Paolo played in. And they had already started to flash some of those higher end passing and driving kick sequences, some of the spacing principles that we discussed when we had that conversation surrounding putting Desmond Bane more in the play finishing spot in the weak side corner when they're running action. That was when Paolo was still playing. And so it's one of those things for me that, like, yes, the team is playing really good basketball right now. Specifically, they're moving the ball more than ever. Their assist percentage is dramatically higher than it was the entirety of this Paolo and Franz era in the last few seasons. They've gained some real momentum as like a ball and player movement type of team. And they've had some improvement in some key areas with their jump shooting. And they are starting to get out and transition more, which is something we've been begging for Orlando forever. But they did start those trends before Paolo got hurt. So here's the thing. See what it looks like when he comes back. There's a version of this where he comes back and he just continues to buy into that and he's more talented. And as a team, you look better. There's also a version where he comes back and he makes things clunky and you lose some of that identity. But ultimately, I think as long as Paolo's on the roster, you've got to try to see if he can make things work in this system. And I do want to give him a little bit more credit than just saying, oh, Paolo's out, the Magic are kicking butt again. They started these winning habits before Paolo got hurt. I do still like this a lot as a Giannis destination for this reason. Paolo is, in theory, on paper, kind of a clunky fit in a ball and player movement type of attack. And bringing in a guy like Giannis who's just dramatically better than Paolo could vault Orlando up to being a clear top-tier contender and far and away the best team in the Eastern Conference, an unbelievable defense, rebound, transition team. And yes, there would be some clunkiness on offense, but I think they'd be better than people think. I think there's a lot of natural synergy between him and a guy like Desmond Bane, too. I still like that as a Giannis destination. But take a Giannis trade and remove it from the equation. You got to see what it looks like when Paolo comes back because he was a part of this success before he got hurt. Should the Warriors trade Buddy Hield and Moody for John Collins? I know Collins isn't the perfect player/fit, but I think the Warriors can afford to give up some guard depth with Seth and Melton coming in. Would love to hear if you think this would help the Warriors. I agree that they can afford to make some sort of consolidation trade from the guard position, but I keep coming back to offensive firepower. The Warriors are 23rd in offensive rating this year. Yet, just like last year, once again, in the latest example of Steph's absurd advantage creation and why he's still one of the greatest offensive engines in the sport, the Warriors with Steph Curry on the floor this year have a 119.3 offensive rating. And it was 120 last year. He continues to be an elite NBA offense in and of himself. Why are they 23rd in offense, though? Because they have a 108 offensive rating in 1,168 possessions with Steph off the floor. They can't score unless Steph creates it. And it's a problem. even with Jimmy on the floor without Steph. Only a 112.6 offensive rating. He hasn't been able to carry the load. And that's another conversation to have around Jimmy and the lack of offensive ceiling that we've seen there. But ultimately, because of that, and because the young guys, like we talked about earlier, and Kuminga and Pods haven't popped offensively, you need firepower. You need someone who can score the basketball. You need someone that can raise the floor of this offense when Steph is off the floor. And that ultimately needs to be the kind of guy that they target. Whether that's a Trey Murphy or it's a Malik Monk or it ends up being some other type of higher level offensive player, they need to bring a higher end offensive floor to the table through the trade market. That needs to be the kind of thing that they're targeting. Hey, Jason, longtime listener. My question is this. I've always been of the mindset that LA should flip Reaves. Given that Luka and Reaves' backcourt long-term seems to lack too much athleticism and foot speed to coexist. The problem always was whether Reaves' trade value could net enough to make it worth it. Now, the way he's playing, currently having one of the most efficient high-volume scoring seasons ever for a guard, I'm wondering who you realistically think they could get for him, if it's worth it, and if you see a potential long-term fit with Luka, so they should hold on to him. Keep up the awesome work. Thanks for supporting the show. I really appreciate it. So this is the thing with Austin. He's made himself so good that you basically can't trade him unless it's going to get back a guy like Giannis. There was a time when Austin, was less consistent. And it was like, yeah, you go for 23 some nights, other nights he wouldn't. And the lack of that consistent offensive pop made it so that his defensive limitations, because he's a lesser athlete, that would pop up every once in a while. And Austin's a fundamentally sound athlete. He just has athletic limitations, right? But like some of those athletic limitations would become a bigger problem because he wasn't as good offensively as he needed to be to cover for that gap, right? During those times, I used to think about Austin trades, and I'd be like, okay, like I really like Austin. I think that he, in the right system could be the third best player on a championship team if he's surrounded by lots of athletes. But like, maybe they'd be better served turning him into a plus athlete, someone that is like, maybe not quite as good offensively, or maybe you attach him to a pick to bring back a higher level guard or whatever it is, but maybe the Lakers need some more athleticism at that spot. Austin's become so good offensively that any perceived potential upside that you get by bringing in a better athlete would be dramatically undercut by the fact that Austin is just a way, way better offensive player. And that just kind of puts any conversation surrounding trading him dead on arrival. Austin just went for 40 and 10 again last night. He's literally averaging 29, 6 and 7 on 67% true shooting this year. He's like so unbelievably good now that it dramatically outweighs any sort of downsides that come with his athleticism. So if you're not getting a dude that is like legitimately just better than Austin, who is now, he's like a third team all NBA guy this year. So if you're not getting back like a second team all NBA guy in an Austin deal, it just doesn't make sense to do it at this point. And he's just the perfect guy to situate with Luka long term because he can completely run the offense when Luka is out. Remember the year where Luka had the injury, I think it was 2022, and Jalen Brunson like had to win a big playoff game on the road in Utah, or against Utah. It might have been at home. I can't remember, but it was in 2022. Jalen Brunson like took a game early in that series without Luka. That was what made him the ideal Luka partner. He could play off of Luka when Luka was there, and he could step into that number one role when Luka had to miss a game for an injury. Austin has clearly demonstrated that he can be that kind of guy. At that point, he's foundational to the Lakers, and you can't move off of him unless some sort of dramatically better option shows up in the future. Thinking Basketball just made a whole video about how the league in general, but especially the Miami Heat, are purposely running fewer pick and rolls. I think Miami is only running something like 13 pick and rolls per 100. I definitely checked that video out. I think you might be disappointed if you're expecting to see the Heat run more pick and rolls eventually. So here's the thing. I think that the offense that the Heat are running is a really fascinating bit of basketball philosophy. Essentially, like, why do we run pick and roll? Why do we run action? We do it to get an advantage. You do it to try to force the defense to react. If we score enough going over the top of the screen, eventually their big will come up to the level. If their big comes up to the level, now they're defending it 3-on-2. We get the defense in rotation. Now we're starting to get those skip passes for open threes and guys cutting along the baseline and all the good things that come when you get a 3-on-2 on the offensive end of the floor, right? That's why you run pick and roll. Why do the Miami Heat play the way they play? Because they get their advantages through driving. By pushing the ball up in transition, playing super fast, they get those advantages, the open man in the corner, the 2 on the ball sequence as someone helps on a drive. They get those with their transition pushes. And then in the half court, they just try to beat their man off the dribble, right? Like like down the roster too. Like you'll see Pelle Larsson just no offensive advantage, catches on the perimeter. Pelle will just throw a damn jab step and then hit a gap. And all of a sudden the defense reacts, kick, open three or open shot for someone else. Like they use dribble penetration to generate those initial advantages. And it fits their roster because they don't really have a lot of high-level pick and roll players. They got one in Tyler Herro, but everyone else, it's like Jaime Jaquez is at his best attacking downhill in semi-transition and turning his back to the basket and posting. Davion Mitchell is at his best just isoing a dude off the top of the key and hitting him with a dribble combination to try to beat him off the dribble and get all the way to the basket, right? So it fits their roster extremely well. Now, why did I say in that Tyler Herro video that I think they'll eventually run more pick and roll? It's about variety. So, for instance, take the end of the Dallas Mavericks game, for example. You put Najee Marshall on Tyler Herro, and Najee's doing a really good job. And all of a sudden, Tyler's not feeling comfortable beating him off the dribble. Well, it'd be nice in that situation if you could still go to your best player, because at the end of that game, Tyler didn't seem to want the ball much. But if you're running ball screens with Bam, maybe Tyler's more engaged in the offense at the end of that game, and your best offensive player has the ball in his hands more as a counter when the actual offense isn't working. And that's all I was saying is, like, I expect over the course of the season for the Herro Bam pick and roll to at least occasionally be used. That doesn't mean they're going to bail on the system. The system is perfect for them, and on many nights, it works great for Tyler. It's an offense that I think will continue to be their foundation. I just think they'll lean on pick and roll as a counter a little bit more than people think as we get deeper into the system. A couple more quick ones before we get out of here. If you were a GM, would you prefer to build around a top-tier superstar with slightly questionable character, for the sake of example, say prime James Harden, or a second-tier superstar with solid character, someone like Jason Tatum? I'm just going to keep it to these two. Would I rather build around prime Jason Tatum or James Harden? It'd be Jason Tatum. And a lot of that has to do with, if you're saying slightly questionable character, I think James Harden's a good person and a good teammate. I think the main issue with James Harden is his unwillingness to do the work on the margins. He has been a big problem for the Clippers defense during some of their losing issues that they've had this season, and that's been an issue throughout his career. A guy like Jason Tatum may not provide that dramatic offensive upside, but he's just so well-rounded around the margins that he's going to be able to anchor me on both ends of the floor in a way that makes him easier to build around. So for those two specific examples, I would take Jason Tatum. Last question. Hey, Jason, longtime fan, been here since before you had your own channel and everything was on the volumes feed, LOL. What do you think about Cat for AD trade for both sides? Think the salaries match. AD gives the Knicks a higher ceiling thanks to his defense if he reaches his peak again. And he's a damn good offensive player too. He's averaging 25 and 11 on good efficiency. Sure, the Knicks would get to the finals with Cat, but once you're there, do you even have a puncher's chance with two great offensive liabilities as your two best players? I think they'd get killed. Of course, AD also comes with a ton of risk. For Dallas, you get a big salary, but you stay relevant and you can space the floor for Flag. Yeah, I like it as a roster balancing move for both teams. For the Knicks, once again, in that Celtics game, Karl Anthony Towns was an absolute nightmare on defense. Botching coverages early in the game, just making a bunch of silly mistakes down the stretch, like chasing Jordan Walsh off the corner when he's made 3 corner threes all season, giving up an open layup, like just all sorts of nonsense from Cat that continues to cost his team at the end of big games. To me, putting him in a situation like Dallas, where he's anchored by centers and he's playing at the 4, kind of like he was in Minnesota, is a better situation for him. And he's a good offensive fit for a team that needs jump shooting like you wouldn't believe. I really like that fit there. And then for the Knicks, Anthony Davis, to your point, actually gives you a legitimate athletic imposition to bring to a finals matchup against an Oklahoma City. I think it flat out makes him better on both ends of the floor. I think AD brings a vertical spacing, roll man, short roll element to his game that is higher level. I think he's a better post player than Karl Anthony Towns in a large sample against elite defenses. I think he handles double teams better. Yeah, I don't think he's great at it, but I think he's better than Cat at it. Like, I think it would just be the kind of move that Makes sense for both teams. The Knicks have more urgency. The Mavs don't. Well, Cat's 2 years younger. I think there's a lot of reasons why that deal makes sense for both teams. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back tonight on Playback for Lakers Celtics. I'll see you guys at 4 p.m. Pacific time. If we don't see you at Playback, we'll see you guys on Monday morning for our weekly power rankings. I will see you guys then.